Hare Krishna. Good morning, dear devotees from Sri Jagannath Puri Dham. It's our daily adventures in Srimad-bhagavatam. And this morning we're continuing with our discussion we're calling Meeting in Kurukshetra. This is part 54. And it's a seventh subsection, which is the Bhramara-gita, the gopis meeting Uddhava. So we'll go ahead and say a few prayers before we begin. If anybody's watching, please share some comments or reflections. Let us know where you're watching from and what you think. Gora Draganya Gana Gocha Goloruharam Goranga Gudatama Gopyata Kopa Briksham Gopala Gada Ratidam Yati Singha Gora Govinda Deshi Kavaram Satatam Namami Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Shaiva Narotamam Divim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Vedi Ramayanesh Chaiva Purane Bharate Tata Adavante Chamadje Chahari Sarvatra Giyate Mukam Karodi Vachalam Bhangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam. Paramananda He Madhava Padungaluchi Makaranda Se Makaranda Panakori Anande Bolo Hari Hari Harinka Name Vanda Vela Parikori Chakadola Se Chakadolanka Padaye Manamo Rahu Nirantare Manamo Nirantare Rahu Ha Krishna Boli Jiva Jao Ha Krishna Boli Jao Jiva Moteu Dada Radha Dava Moteu Dada Radha Dava Moteu Dada Radha Dava Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. Good morning, dear devotees from Sri Jagannath Puri Dham. This is our 54th session in our series of talks we're calling Meeting in Kurukshetra, and our seventh part of the Bhramara-gita, Uddhava's meeting with the gopis at the place known as Uddhava. And I'm happy to see Vidyapati here, and Govinda Vallabha, Brinda Sundari, and Ananta Gauranga, and others. If you have any reflections at the end of the katha, please share that. Today we're continuing with this very, very esoteric, maybe kind of off-the-charts esoteric discussion about the connection between the Bhramara-gita and Gaura Lila. So we've been speaking something for the last 3 or 4 sessions, from maybe 7 sessions even, I guess, from the 47th chapter of the 10th canto, from text number 4, where the gopis, they speak to Uddhava and they say, Sneha Bando Bandhanam Munir Api Sudustyaja. That we know why you came here. You came here to give pleasure to Krishna's parents. It wasn't actually for us. This message that you're bringing is not really for us. Rather, we understand that Sneha Anubandha, the attachment of affection, Sneha Anubandha, Bandhanam, to the relatives, the Bandhanam, that's Munir Api Sudushaja. Munir Api Sudushaja, it's very, very difficult, Sudushaja, very difficult to give up even for a Muni. So we've been speaking largely from the commentary, from one sentence of a commentary, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, where he explains the word muni to mean, in this verse, he says, Mune krita sannyasa syapi dustyaja. That even munis who take sannyas find it hard to give up the relationship with their father and mother. So Vishwanath is saying that this is the purport of what the gopis are saying. This is their meaning here. They're saying that, oh, Krishna, you took sannyas, you left all the gopis, you left Vrindavan, but even sannyasis like you find it hard to give up your relationship with their father and mother. And that's the reason why you're sending this fellow Uddhava. It's really nothing for us. They're saying, just see how severe Krishna's renunciation is. Now he's associating with all these ladies in Mathura, and he's given up all the countless wives of others whom he enjoyed. So to show the gopis, to repay his debt to them, and to show that he's more attached to them than his mother, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had to take sannyas and leave his mother to run to Radha in Jagannath Puri. And Lochandas Thakur in Caitanya-mangala calls that Adbhuta Vairagya. So I'm going to take another step backwards to review a little bit of what we've been speaking about in the last few sessions, because we need this, because it's a very, very deep connection. We're making connections with many different literatures here. In the 14th chapter of the Ancha Leela, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami describes the mood of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Gambhira, and how that's particularly the mood of the Bhramara-gita. And therefore, as we described in our last couple sessions, our acharyas, many Vaishnavas, have described that this 47th chapter of the 10th canto is the most important chapter. More important than Krishna's appearance, more important than the Rasa Panchadhyaya, the 5 chapters describing the Rasa Leela, because this chapter describes the mood of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Jagannath Puri in the Gambhira. It was this chapter, this exchange between the gopis and Uddhava, and particularly Srimati Radharani and Uddhava, for which Krishna found it necessary to come as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So in the 14th verse of the 14th chapter of Ancha Leela of Caitanya-caritamrta, Kaviraj Goswami describes Radhikara Bhavi Prabhu Sada Abhiman, that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was Sada Abhiman. He was always in the conception, the Abhiman, that he's in the mood of Srimati Radharani, Radhikara Bhavi. Se Bhave Apanaki Hoy Radha Gyan. That this mood exactly corresponded to the emotions of Radharani when she met with Uddhava. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was always thinking of Radharani's mood, and sometimes he was thinking that he's Radharani himself. So what is that business that was going on there? In the Ancha Leela chapter 19, it's described about Mahaprabhu's Gambhira pastimes. He's hearing from Swarup Damodar and Roy Ramananda. We elaborately explained that before, how Swarup Damodar is Lalita in Krishna Leela, and Ramananda Roy is Vishaka, and they've come to teach Krishna how to taste the mood of Radha. And so they came to this University of Braj Prem in Jagannath Puri. They opened it up, and they have a textbook, which is Srimad-bhagavatam, and as well as the different songs of Vidyapati, Chandidas, Jayadev Goswami's Gita Govinda, Bilvamangala Thakur's Krishna Karnamrita, and others. So we sung from a song by Vidyapati from his Bhangiya Padabali. With Srimati Radharani, she's addressing Lord Shiva. And she addresses him that you're that personality who has no body. Why do you want to burn my body? She's speaking to Cupid. Hama naha Shankar. I'm not Shankar. I'm just a Baranari. Baranari means a girl who lives in the forest, or a gentle girl, because people who live in the forest, generally they're gentle persons. And Radharani is telling Cupid that, look, I'm not Lord Shiva, don't get angry with me. Nahi jata iha beni bhanga. This is my flowing hair, it's not matted locks of jata. Malati malasiri. I have a garland on my head of malati flowers. This is not the Ganga. Motima Bhadamoli Naha Indu. This is not the moon on my head. This is some pearl decoration. Bali Noyana Saha Sindhu Bindu. This is not a third eye in my head. This is my Bindu spot. Kante Gaya Naha Mrigamadasar. I don't have poison on my neck. This is some musk that I put on my throat. Mrigamadasar. Mriga means this particular type of deer, and the sar, that the musk, the smell, the scent from that type of deer, that's on my throat. Naha Fani Raja. It's not the Fani Raja means the king of the snakes. This is not a king of snakes around my neck. But Ure Manihar, this is a pearl necklace around my neck. Nila Patambara Naha Bagachal. Naha Bagachal, it's not a tiger skin that I have around me. Nila Patambara, it's a blue silk cloth. Radharani's thinking of Krishna. Kailika Kamala Iha Naha Ikapala. And she says, very important for our discussion, Kailika Kamala Iha. Iha means this, Kailika Kamala, this is a lotus, a pastime lotus. Naha Ikapala. It's Kapala, it's not a skull in my hand. That's a very significant point. So this is a song of Vidyapati, and it seems to be an explanation of a very esoteric song. We've been covering over this. I want to go a little further. Actually, maybe, hopefully even today, try to finish this song, which is spoken by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We'll find in Anchalila of Caitanya-caritamrta, chapter 14, text 41 to 51, where Mahaprabhu speaks about the yogi of my mind. And Kaviraj Goswami, as we mentioned, I think in our last session, in text 41, gives a kind of Mangala Charana for this song before the actual song starts. You can see in the Bengali Paya, this is a Sanskrit shlok which begins it, and the song begins with text number 42. And there Kaviraj Goswami, he mentions that Grihita Kapalika Dharma Kome, that I've adopted, Mahaprabhu says, I've adopted the Dharma of a Kapalika yogi, a particular type of sannyasi. And Vrindavanam Sendriya Sishya Brinda. I'm on my way to Vrindavan, Sa Indriya Sishya, with my disciples, the 5 senses, the 10 senses, excuse me. So Prabhupada in his commentary gives a 1-sentence purport. He says this verse is clearly metaphorical. So what does this mean, this Kapalika yogi? Well, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is hearing from Swarup Damodar Goswami the songs of Vidyapati. And in this particular song of Vidyapati, he says, Kailika Kamala Iha Nahai Kapala. That Radharani, he's speaking about the mood of Radha, and Radha is telling Cupid, look, don't burn me alive. I'm not Lord Shiva. Don't get angry. I know you're angry with Lord Shiva because Lord Shiva burned you to ashes. But Kailika Kamala Iha, this is a lotus flower in my hand. Nahai Kapala. This is not a skull. So this has a very deep purport, as we've been explaining. This song in Anchalila chapter 14, in my humble opinion, is one of the most esoteric and mysterious songs, which Prabhupada says is clearly metaphorical, in the Caitanya-caritamrta. I always wanted to have some time to go deep into this thing. So Mahaprabhu is described in the next verse that he grabbed Roy Ramananda and Swarup Damodar around the necks. Roy Swarupera Kantadari. And Kahe Ha Ha Hari Hari, he began to cry, oh Krishna, where are you, my dear Krishna? And then the song begins actually in text 43. He says, Sunabandhava Krishnada Madhuri. My dear friends, please hear about the Krishnada Madhuri, the sweetness of Krishna. And he says that Jar Lobi Moraman, out of a greed to enjoy that sweetness of Krishna, Chadi Loka Veda Dharma, I've given up all my Veda Dharma, And yogi hana hayali bhikkhari. I become this crazy kind of mystic yogi who's not even like a normal sannyasi. A sannyasi's there within the Vedic culture, but he says, Chadi loka Veda dharma. I've abandoned everything. I'm not even that kind of sannyasi. Yogi hana hayala bhikkhari. I become this mystic kind of yogi. Mystic kind of yogi, the Kapalika yogi. This kind of mendicant who carries a skull in his hand. And we spoke something about that in our last session, that this is a kind of Shaivite sannyasi who wants very much to give up the material world, and then out of a desire to give up everything, he wants to remember that death is always at hand. And so he takes a skull, he keeps a skull in his hand. And some of those yogis had said they actually eat out of that skull. A pretty sober thing, because that eating is what keeps us alive. That's our life. And so you're taking your life out of a skull. You're being reminded that this life is over very, very soon. So Mahaprabhu goes on. We spoke about this in our last sessions. I'm still just reviewing a little bit. How he says that Krishna Lila Mandala Sudha Shanka Kundala, that there's an earring that this mystic yogi wears. These Kapalika yogis, they wear one earring. And what is that earring? That's the earring of Krishna Lila Mandala, the Ras Lila. Say Kundala Kanapari, Krishna Laut Halidari, Asujuli Kundara Upar. The yogi of my mind is wearing that earring on his ear, and then he has a kamandalu, which is made out of a gourd, and that's my Trishna Lao Talidhari. That's my aspirations that I have, my Trishna, my desires. And I'm keeping that bag on my shoulder. And then he says something which I want to come back to a little later in the next text. We also spoke about this text in our last kata. We're going to continue with text number 47 today. I'm just reviewing all the way up here because it's very, very esoteric, and it has, every word has lots of deep purport. Mahaprabhu goes on in the 45th verse. He says, Chinta kanta urigai, duli vibhuti malina kai, haha Krishna pralapa uttara. This shows us another connection, this verse, between the Bhramara-gita and the Caitanya-caritamrta. So I want to look now at some a text from the 13th chapter of the Adi Leela, of the Kaviraj Goswami says, Vidyapati Jayadev Chandidasa Gita Aswadena Ramananda Sarup Sahita. My Guru Maharaj quotes this in a chapter which we're about to add to Embankment of Separation. This verse speaks about how Mahaprabhu was hearing from Roy Ramananda and Srup Damodar Goswami, Vidyapati Jayadev Chandidas Gita. He was hearing from them the songs of Vidyapati Jayadev and Chandidas. Aswadena, he was relishing that, and that was nourishing the feelings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So my Guru Maharaj, in one lecture, he was reviewing this, and he was reviewing some commentary by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, which is a very, very deep commentary. We're going to be coming back through our exploration of the Bhramara-gita. We're going to come back to some of these verses a little later. But while we're touching on it right now, I just want to review it. The significance of the word chinta in this verse, and the words duli vibhuti malina kai. Chinta means anxiety, and duli vibhuti means that he has some dust, some vibhuti, some ashes all over his body. His body's become malina kai. His body's become very dirty. And then he says, haha Krishna pralap uttara. That word pralap is also very significant, that I have this pralap. So my Guru Maharaj, speaking from a purport of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, he says that Mahaprabhu is always feeling acute pangs of separation from Krishna. He is always crying. Radharani has different stages of conditions in her feelings of separation. The same stages, the same feelings have been manifested by Mahaprabhu because he is in Radha Bhav. There are 10 stages, Dasami Dasa. So this Dasami Dasa is a topic we'll come back to later much more elaborately, speaking from the purport, a wonderful purport of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, where he quotes elaborately from Hansadut, from Lalita Madhav, from Ujjwal Nilamani, and different literatures of the Goswamis, to give examples of these 10 different stages of separation experienced by Srimati Radharani. And these 10 different stages are manifested at the time of the Bhramara-gita. So the first of those 10 stages is chinta, anxiety. And this is the first word in this 45th verse of Mahaprabhu's song here in the Puri. He says, the chinta kanta, that I have this great anxiety. Jagara is the second symptom, where I'm not able to sleep. Udvega, mental agitation. Tanava, this is the fourth symptom, the body begins wasting away. And the fifth symptom, malinangata, means uncleanliness. So we see in this verse, Duli vibhuti malina kai, that I have this malina kai, that my body's become dirty. And why is it dirty? It has this duli vibhuti, this dust and ashes on it. This has a very, very deep purport. I don't want to go so much into all this. We'll just go down a rabbit hole which we may never come out of. But this duli is expressed in other places in the literatures of our Goswamis, that Krishna, one of his purposes in coming is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He wants the duli, the dust of Srimati Radharani. He wants the duli, the dust of the Braj Gopikas. He wants the duli of all the devotees. So here Mahaprabhu is saying, Duli vibhuti malinakai. I have this malinakai. This is one of the 10 symptoms, dasami dasa, 10 stages of separation. There's different types of separation. The most intense type of separation is called sudura prabhas. That's when Krishna has gone to Mathura Dwarka, and the gopis don't know if he's going to return or not. And so there's 10 different symptoms of that sudura prabhas, 10 different stages, the fifth of which is malinangata. The body becomes unclean. And so Mahaprabhu is clearly expressing this here. First he expresses a chinta, and then he expresses this malinakai, that my body has become unclean. And how is it unclean? Duli vibhuti. I have this dust on it and this ashes on it. What does the ashes indicate? That indicates Lord Shiva. Mahadev Shankar, he's a great renunciate, a great sannyasi. He's destroyed Cupid, and he's burned Cupid to ashes, and he takes the ashes of different Vaishnavas and he smears them all over his body. So this is the dirtiness. This is the dirtiness of this body. It's not an ordinary dirtiness. It's a ecstatic symptom. And then he's saying, Haha Krishna Pralapa Uttara. That he's calling out Pralapa Uttara in a very crazy kind of way. He's speaking this pralap. Well, this pralap, this is the sixth symptom of dasami dasa, or the sixth symptom, the sixth stage of separation, this sudura prabhas, after Krishna's left for Mathura and or Dwarka, and the gopis don't know if they're going to see him again. So they're speaking to Uddhava at Uddhava-kari, and this 47th chapter of the 10th canto contains this dasami dasa, these 10 different symptoms of the sudura prabhas, the most intense type of separation. There's a lot of technical things. But if you want to understand Gaura Lila properly, if we want to understand the importance of this 47th chapter properly, we have to turn to some of these technical terms. I'm sorry, there's just no other way. So let's continue with just briefly introducing this dasami dasa, these 10 different symptoms of separation, 10 different stages of the sudura prabhas, the most intense type of separation, which is what Srimati Radharani is experiencing at the place known as Uddhava-kari, after Krishna's left Vrindavan, and is manifested before Uddhava in this 47th chapter, the 10th canto, which again is expanded upon by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in this Anchilila chapter 14 in this song. Okay? So many connections. Try to bear these in mind. So the Fifth symptom is uncleanliness. The sixth symptom is pralap. The sixth symptom is vyadi, having like disease. Unmada is the seventh symptom of madness. Moha is, that's the eighth. Moha, fainting, is the ninth. And then 10th is mityu, death. So Srila Prabhupada, let's look back again in the beginning of this, his purport to this 14th chapter, the song given there, which I'm offering as an explanation to help us understand the Bhramara-gita, the song of Mahaprabhu in this 14th chapter. Prabhupada says this verse is clearly metaphorical. And Mahaprabhu is speaking about how I've become Grihita Kapalika Dharmaka. I've become this Kapalika yogi who always thinks of death. So this is a mood of Srimati Radharani. Repeatedly, Kaviraj Goswami states in Caitanya-caritamrta that this mood of Mahaprabhu in the Gambhira is the mood of Radha at the time of the Bhramara-gita. And so that Bhramara-gita manifests 10 different symptoms, dasami dasa, the last of which is death. This is a Kapalika yogi. The Srimati Radharani desires this death, and how she desires this death is expanded upon again by the poet Vidyapati, and therefore we sang that song. And it's expanded further in the Caitanya-caritamrta Ancha-lila chapter 14. Very esoteric thing. I'm sorry, I feel like we're going fast, but let's review one more verse, and we'll start with the newest verse in this chapter of Ancha-lila, chapter 14. Mahaprabhu says, Vyasa Sukari Yogi Gun Krishna Atmi Niranjan. Okay, so this yogi of my mind, Mahaprabhu, as we said, he's come to the Jagannath Puri University of Braj Prem. He has 2 professors teaching him, Lalita and Vishaka, in the form of Srup Damodar and Roy Ramananda, and they have different textbooks that they're teaching him in that university. Those are the songs of Vidyapati, Chandidas, Bilva-mangala Thakur, Jayadev Goswami. And here, he says also, Vyasa Sukati Yogi Gun, that the textbook of my mind is studying the words of Dvaipayana Vyasadeva, Srila Vyasadeva and Shukadev Goswami, Yogi Gun, and other different mystic yogis that are found, Bhagavatadi Shastra Gani, that are described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay? So now we're going to go on to our first verse for today. That was a little bit of a review, a little bit of an expanded review, I think. Anyway. So, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu goes on with his song. Desindriye Sishya Kori Mahabola Namadari Sishalana Kori Legaman. Hey. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Moradeha Swasadana, Vishaya Bhog Mahadana, Sabachari Gela Vrindavan. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. He says, very, very deep song. Dasendriya Sishya Kori. I have 10 different disciples. Mahabola Namadhari. This mystic of my mind, this yogi of my mind, who's assumed the name, Mahabola Namadhari, of Mahabola, which means a great mad person. And the Balas are also, they're a type of sect, a Vaishnav sect within, Gaudiya Vaishnav sect within West Bengal, who Bhaktivinoda Thakur described as Upasampradaya. But the word Baal means a mad person. It's a type of mendicant. But I become this kind of mendicant, a mad mendicant. And I have these 10, they've made disciples out of my 10 senses. In other words, my mind has controlled my 10 senses. In this ecstasy of my mind, which is one of the dasami dasa, this unmada. My mind has become completely mad. And this madness of my mind, my senses have become under control. And this indicates the different astakala asasaptikara bhava, the different symptoms of ecstasy which manifest within the body. My mind is taken over my senses, and these senses, they become my disciples following my mind. And he says that Korili Gamana Deha Swasadhana, my body is given up Vishaya Bhoga, all types of material enjoyment, and Mahadhan, given up all this great treasure of material enjoyment, and Sabachadi Gela Vrindavan, it's gone to Vrindavan. It's given up everything and gone to Vrindavan Dham. So Krishna, he has to repay his debt to the gopis. It's a debt of feeling. It's not a debt of currency. It's not a debt of information. It's a debt of feeling. And as we've commented many times, that debt has to be calculated in the highest degree of the debt. So the highest degree is found in this dasami dasa, these 10 different symptoms of Sudura Prabhas, the most intense type of separation that Radharani is experiencing, which is described in the 47th chapter of the 10th canto, the Bhramara-gita. So Mahaprabhu is saying that my mind has become mad and it wants to go to Vrindavan. My mind in this madness has made disciples out of my 10 senses. Prabhupada comments in his purport, he says, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu compares his mind to one of the mystic yogis known as Bolas, who make at least 10 disciples. And here he's saying these 10 disciples are my mind, are my 10 different senses. And it's running to Vrindavan. Running to Vrindavan means what? It means that running to Vrindavan to experience the mood of the gopis there. So then in the 48th verse, Mahaprabhu continues his song. Vindavani prajagdan jata stava jangama vikshalata grihasta ashrame. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Taragare Bhikshatana Phala Mula Patrasana E Vritti Kori Sishasane. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So Mahaprabhu is continuing with his song. Prabhupada translates this verse in Vrindavan. Okay, in Vrindavan, the yogi of my mind. In the Vrindavan, he goes from door to door begging alms with all his disciples. He's not just begging alms. He's not begging alms in Mathura. He's not begging alms in St. Petersburg or in Budapest or in New York City. He's going to Vrindavan. Not Dwarka, not Mathura, not anywhere else. Along, Prabhupada says, in Vrindavan, he goes from door to door begging alms with all his disciples. This is the words of Mahaprabhu. He's holding Srup Damodar and Roy Ramananda around the neck and crying and speaking about this mood. In Vrindavan, he says that the Baal, the yogi of my mind, is going from door to door begging alms with all his disciples. He begs from both the moving and the inert inhabitants. And in particular, he mentions Briksha Lata. Briksha means the trees, and the Lata, the creepers of Vrindavan. And in this way, he lives on fruits, roots, and the leaves. So much purport in this song. To unpack this completely, to go down that rabbit hole, we would get lost for a long, long time. So we find in the Gopi Gita of the Rasa Panchadhyaya, the descriptions of the Ras Lila, that the gopis, after Krishna disappeared, in their feelings of separation, they began to go to all the trees and plants and creepers of Vrindavan, and they were asking them in their madness, where is Krishna? Where is Krishna? So this has a deep purport to it. They're asking these trees in madness, but not just in madness. They could ask so many different people. They're not asking the cowherd boys. They're not asking Mother Yashoda. Wouldn't it make more sense for the gopis to go to Mother Yashoda and ask, why are they asking from trees and creepers? You don't expect that they're going to have much to say to you. It has a deep purpose because, first of all, these trees and creepers, these are Brijbasis. These are the manifestations of the ecstasy of Vrindavan. These are personalities. These are Kalpa-vriksha trees. They're approaching him because they know you're a wish-fulfilling tree. You can grant my desires. And you're not just any ordinary wish-fulfilling tree amongst all the wish-fulfilling trees. None of them are ordinary, but you're extraordinary even amongst the wish-fulfilling trees because these are the vriksha-lata, the creepers and trees of the kunjas of Vrindavan. And what is so special about those kunjas of Vrindavan, that's the place of the pastimes. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Ashishi Radha and Krishna. So they understand this. They're not just there as a decoration, as an ornament. They're not only there as an udipana, something which is going to increase the ecstasy, but their personalities. And their service is to enhance the pastimes of Radha and Krishna in a very, very intimate way. Although there, as Prabhupada translates in the purport here, the inert inhabitants, they're not moving around or anything, but those inert inhabitants, the stavara jangama, stavara means the non-moving and the jangama, said in this verse, the moving and the non-moving and the moving, the gopis are asking all of them, don't just think, oh, these are someone in some Shanta Ras or something. These are very exalted personalities. They know things that Mother Yashoda doesn't know. They know things that Sridhama doesn't know and that some of the cowherd boys don't know because they're there and they're helping this to create these pastimes of Radha and Krishna. So the gopis are going to them. And Mahaprabhu, he's speaking to Srup Damodar and Roy Ramananda with his arms around their neck, and he's saying, my mad mind, this yogi of my mind is going door to door in Vrindavan, begging alms with all his disciples, and he's begging Stavara Jangama Vriksha-lata. He's begging from the non-moving and the moving residents, the Vriksha-lata, the trees and the creepers who are there. Grihastha Ashram, he's speaking, going door to door to the householders who are there. And Bhiksha Atana, he's begging for them, Phala Mula Patra. What is he begging? Fruits, roots, and leaves, which he's eating. Asana e Briti, this is his business that he's doing, Sishya Sani with his disciples. He's taking the fruits, roots, and leaves of Vrindavan. This has both a literal meaning and a metaphorical meaning. Literally, this is what the residents of Vrindavan live off of. They're nourished by these very, very wonderful Vriksha-lata, these trees and creepers of Vrindavan, who are giving Phala Mula Patra. They're giving fruits. Their roots are also very, very important. And they're giving leaves. Those leaves are also very, very important. They're used for decoration. Sometimes they're used for medicine. Some of the leaves are used to eat. And this, he's saying, this is what we're begging. And asana e briti, this is what we're eating. This is our business. We're eating this thing. We're eating the fruits, roots, and leaves. Literally, but also metaphorically or symbolically, because this is the fruits, roots, and leaves of these ecstatic personalities who are creating these kunjas in Vrindavan. And I have to go there because now I have to repay my debt to the gopis, so I have to run to that place and I have to eat that conception of that kunj. This is one meaning. Then in text 49, Mahaprabhu, with his arms around Srup Damodar and Roy Ramananda, he's expressing his ecstatic feelings, which is an explanation of the feelings of Radharani in this 47th chapter of the 10th canto. I was hoping we could go a little bit further today. It's very, very difficult to express all this. I think we'll just finish with this next song, next verse. And if any devotees here have any reflections or anything, it'll be a time for it at that point. So just another few minutes. Krishna Guna Rupa Ras Kanda Shabda Parasas Say Sudha Ashra De Gopigam. Hey, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Tasubhara Gasya Seshe Ani Panchandriya Sishe Se Bhikshaya Rakena Jiva. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. So Mahaprabhu, with his arms around Swarup Damodar and Roy Ramananda and the Gambhira, crying and crying, he's expressing this ecstatic song, which is unpacking the feelings of Srimati Radharani in the 47th chapter of the 10th canto of this Bhramara-gita. And he says there, Krishna Guna Rupa Ras, Ganda Shabda Parasas, Se Sudha Asari Gopi Gan. These Gopi Gan, these gopis, Se Sudha Asari Gopi Gan, they're always tasting this nectar. What nectar? Krishna Guna Rupa Ras, Ganda Shabda Paras. They're always tasting the nectar of Krishna's guna, his form, his qualities, his roop, his beauty that he has. The rasa of Krishna. They're relishing the ganda shabda paras, the fragrance of Krishna, the touch of Krishna, the sound, the sabda of Krishna. Se Sudha Aswade, this is their food. Sudha, this is that nectar that they're tasting, these gopi gan. This is what I have to do. Indirectly, Mahaprabhu, who's Krishna himself, is indicating to Swarup Damodar and Roy Ramananda, I also have to do this. The gopis, they've become mad at the place known as Uddhavakeri, near to Nandagaon. That place is still there today. The place where they met with Uddhava, where they went completely mad, and they were relishing. They were drinking, say Sudha. Sudha means nectar, and this particular nectar made them go mad. And they started experiencing these different symptoms or different stages of dasa. So he says, Tasabhara grasa seshe. Relishing all these things, grasa seshe, this remnants of food. I want to gather these remnants from the gopis. Again, as we've often commented, this is the kirtan of our sampradaya. That Krishna himself wants to come and relish the kirtan of the gopis. And what is the kirtan of the gopis? Krishna Guna Rupa Ras Ganda Sabda Parasa Sesuda Asari Gopi Gan. They're relishing. It's not just a mechanical recitation. They're relishing Krishna Guna Rupa Ras Ganda Sabda Paras. They're relishing this thing. And he says, my mind's 5 disciples, as Pancha Indriya Sishye, these 5 disciples, say Bhikshaya, my mind is like a mad yogi, and it's going and begging alms. This is the alms they want. They want the remnants of the food of these gopis. They want the remnants of their kirtan. And Rakena Jivan, this is what's going to keep me alive. This is my life. Because in separation from Krishna, Mahaprabhu is experiencing that feeling. I'm going to die. And what keeps him alive at that time is the kirtan of Swarup Damodar and the Krishna Katha of Ramananda Ray, is relishing the feelings of the gopis and Srimati Radharani, especially in this Bhramara-gita, in the 47th chapter of the 10th canto. So Prabhupada translates this verse, the gopis of Braj Bhumi always taste the nectar of Krishna's attributes, his beauty, his sweetness, his aroma, the sound of his flute, and the touch of his body. My mind's 5 disciples, the senses of perception, gather the remnants of that nectar from the gopis and bring them to the yogi of my mind. The senses maintain their lives by eating those remnants. So I don't know, to be quite frank with you, who we're speaking all this for. Maybe I'm speaking honestly this for myself because it's something I always wanted to meditate on. I always wanted to go deep in this song from this 14th chapter, the Ancha Lila. But I don't know if this is a very suitable topic to be posting on Facebook. But I feel like we really have no choice because this is something my Guru Maharaj indicated indirectly, our acharyas have indicated indirectly. And as my Guru Maharaj said sometimes, he said, speaking to the devotees in Bhubaneswar, he said to us that I don't know if you're qualified or not, but I have to speak this. Somebody has to speak this. And he once told me, he said that we should work to help uphold the prestige of Srila Prabhupada's mission. And the way to do that is to have nice Krishna Katha and nice Vaishnava dealings. So he said we should show that everything is there. He told me this personally also. We should show that within Prabhupada's mission, everything is there. And the devotees don't have to go to other Vaishnavas, other Sanghas outside of ISKCON, but everything is here in this Sangha. So, in a humble desire to try to serve this expressed desire of my Guru Maharaj, I'm speaking in this way, but I have to say very honestly, it's very deceitful because I'm not a qualified person to speak on this subject, but I have to because I want to serve my Guru Maharaj, and he's such a person. So I'm speaking on this in the hopes that something will rub off on me and that I might get to understand a little bit of it. Not that I'm qualified. And I understand that if we speak on this topic, just as we give the example sometimes of someone who's so sick that they can't digest even water. When there's a story of one devotee who became so sick, he couldn't even drink water. He would have to vomit it out, and it would come out through diarrhea. And they took him to a Ayurvedic doctor, and the doctor told him, give him ghee. And they said, doctor, you're crazy. He can't digest water. Give him ghee. Okay, and they gave him ghee, and immediately he vomited it out. But what happened? That ghee coated his stomach. It made a lining in his stomach, by which he was able to start to digest further foodstuffs. So it's my hope also that by speaking and meditating on these things, it may act as a kind of ghee which will line my stomach, my digestive tract, so that I can understand these topics a little further. And I can do this as a service to my Guru Maharaj and the qualified devotees. So I want to thank everybody very much for walking with us in this madness. And then to Gauranga Prabhu, Natalia, Naveen Prabhu, Subal Sham, making some comments. Mahasundri, Hare Krishna, nice to see you, Mahasundri. I hope you're okay. I think about you quite often after your husband's disappearance. I hope all's well for you. Yashoda Dulal Prabhu is writing to us from that very distant, remote place, uncivilized place known as New Jersey. He says, your talks happen right as I'm going off to bed in New Jersey. They are so deep and charming that my mind becomes restless with thoughts of what you have just shared about Mahaprabhu and Krishna. Thank you. Thank you, Yashoda Dulal Prabhu. I have no qualification to do this. We're just doing it as a service. And Manju Krishna Prabhu is also here. Manju Krishna Prabhu grew up here in Orissa. He knew our Guru Maharaj from his birth. His father was Guru Maharaj's student. He's a student teacher under our Guru Maharaj. He was very close to Guru Maharaj from his birth. Yashoda Dulal Prabhu goes on to say, thank you for sharing these topics. You're indeed most qualified to speak on them. Even if people like me are not qualified to hear them, they benefit us all through the sound vibration. It's important, and that he's giving some philosophical point there, that even if we're not qualified to hear these things, we have to hear these things. It's not that we're going to lock up some of Srila Prabhupada's books and just wait until everybody's qualified for it. That was not Srila Prabhupada's mood. Srila Prabhupada wanted devotees to distribute Caitanya-caritamrta. He wanted the devotees to distribute teachings of Lord Chaitanya, which is like the highest essence of Caitanya-caritamrta, on the street to people in the public. And I can vouch that that distribution has some value, because some devotee kindly gave me a copy of Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, and it was that book which convinced me to become a devotee, not Bhagavad-gita, which I'd also been given before, and not teachings of Science of Self-Realization, and Chant and Be Happy. I had all those books. I was a fan of George Harrison. I read Chant and Be Happy, but it didn't convince me to become a devotee. It convinced me to chant, but not to move into the temple. But when I read Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, or I started to read it, it completely blew my mind. Smoke was coming out my ears, and I said, man, I've got to move into the temple for this. So there is some purpose to this, even if we can't fully digest it and in a philosophical, intellectual way understand everything at once. As my Guru Maharaj sometimes told us, you just listen, you just hear these topics. And so we're reciting it for that purpose. So if anybody else has any reflections, you can share it online. Otherwise, I'm going to turn to anybody here in the room. Anybody have any reflections here? Okay, there's one. crazy girl. I know what she's going to talk about.
Yes,
I have a feeling. Riksha. Yes? Okay.
Yeah, manifestation of Vrindavan's ecstasy. Yeah, it was an interesting way you express how they're important in Vrindavan, so that trees and plants are a manifestation of Vrindavan's ecstasy. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that Gopi they didn't come to Gopas or Mother Yashoda. They went so they went to plants, and it was really it's interesting how they direct witnesses of Radha Madhava's Leela. Like if you compare it with Gopas or Mother Yashoda, of course they have different bhav and that's why they can't, but interesting that they're so dear to Krishna and Radha, they trust them that they're witnesses. And another thing you mentioned that the only thing which maintained Mahaprabhu's life was when he was in Gambhira was kirtan with Ramananda Ray and Swarup Damodar. And I was thinking about Vrindavan Leela, how for gopis the only thing which maintained their life was Krishna's promise to come back. And I just wanted to ask you to comment on this connection. Thank you.
Well, there's two things that kept them alive. One is Krishna's promise. He said, Ayasya. Bhagavatam says when he left, he said, I'm going to return. But that alone wouldn't have kept them alive. But they had a sangha. There was an association of gopis, and they remembered those words of Krishna amongst themselves, and they spoke about not just that promise, but also the pastimes of Krishna. And when they spoke about that with such intensity, when they sung about those pastimes, it gave them life. And in particular, Acharyas, there's a couple songs, it's a very deep subject. I don't know if we'll go this deep in it or not. It's a very deep rabbit hole to go down. Srimati Radharani was feeling this desire for death. And what kept her alive was the kirtan of the gopis. After Krishna had left Vrindavan, she's feeling like she's going to die. And the gopis kept her alive by doing this kirtan. So my Guru Maharaj once said that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's bhajan is a desire for death. What does that mean? That doesn't sound very nice. Don't tell that to brand new people when they come to the temple. They won't understand. They think, oh my God, this is a suicide cult or something. But because he has the mood of Radha, and Radharani is in the mood of being like a Kapalika yogini, carrying a skull of death and always remembering it, because she wants to die in separation from Krishna. She can't die. She's living with death constantly, like this Kapalika yogi who carries a skull with him everywhere he goes. So that's the bhajan of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That's the mood, and that's the mood of the gopis in Braj after Krishna left. They could hardly stay alive. They were living with death. And that living with that death meant that they were thinking of Krishna constantly, and they were being kept alive to the kirtan of the other gopis. Is that okay, Anapaini? All right? Okay, anybody else here in the room? We have any reflection? I think Krishna Kun has something. Okay, let's put this over here. It may fall off. Don't hold it. You can hold it there. Don't hold it there. But speak really loud and talk and project and speak really loud. Okay.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much. I was looking forward to this. The first thing that I was really struck by was this Dasha purport of Srila Bhakti-siddhanta Saraswati Thakur that our Gurudev was speaking about, and how that those 10 stages of Sudura Prabhas manifest in these verses of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I never understood that, like I never looked at these verses in these terms, so that really made a deep impression on my heart. And then one of the verses says that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu calls the yogi of his mind as somebody who made 10 disciples, and Prabhupada comments on it. But what came to me from this is that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is fully given to his disciples. And sometimes Srila Niranjan Maharaj comments on how his disciples help him to be more accountable and to be more committed. Of course, that's his humility, but sometimes he comments like that his disciples help him.
You mean the disciples meaning his senses?
No, his followers help him become more accountable and more sold out to Srila Prabhupada and more absorbed in Krishna Nam, in Kirtan, not just because because he wants to help them, and because he wants to help them, he knows he has to do this, otherwise he can't help them, and he speaks in this way, and that's his humility. But it just reminded me of this, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu engages all of his senses in Krishna fully, and that's why he can say that his mind became this yogi who is just ready to run to Vrindavan. And it reminded me of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Bhajana Darpana commentary on Manashiksha 1, where he says that, I'm going to read this because it's so good. He says, Raghunath Das Goswami defines surrender as the external indication of one's internal cultivation of unalloyed love and attraction for the lotus feet of Radha Krishna. So the senses are the external indications of what is going on internally, and in that sense they are the disciples. But at the same time, for us, if we engage the senses, then the mind becomes saturated with what the senses give to him, and then the mind can become a yogi who can run to Vrindavan. And it reminded me of Bhakti Vigyan Maharaj's commentary on the Manashiksha 1, where he speaks about something interesting. He speaks about why we identify with the mind so much. Everything else it's easy for us to understand that we are not the body, but it's not easy for anyone who comes to the association of devotees to understand that they are not the mind. And he is explaining how that's because in the absence of our real ego as Krishnadas, the false ego gets the mind to take on this function of having our personality. And therefore when we come to the devotees, we are fully identifying with the mind, because this is our personality, this is me. And that's why it's so difficult to give this up, and that's why we have to learn to just become an observer of what's going on in the mind, tolerate whatever is going on, not interfere, become detached from it, and then we will be able to see that we are not that thing. Anyway, it was a whopper comment from Bhakti Vigyan Maharaj from me, and I was applying this to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He's fully identifying with what is coming in from the senses to the mind, which is just Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. And the conclusion of this is that because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's bhajan is the desire for death, that's the reason for the intensity of our Acharya's bhajan. We often speak about the Kirtanavas Sampradaya. They want to save Mahaprabhu from death. It's not just Mahaprabhu is experiencing the same thing as Srimati Radharani, and therefore he's thinking about Krishna and they are helping him. They are like the gopis surrounding Radharani, literally fighting for her life. And this is what our acharyas are doing, and this is what they are engaging us in. And that's why their intensity for preaching, because they want everybody to help Mahaprabhu. They are trying to save him from death.
Beautiful comments. Thank you, Krishna. It reminded me of something that we often speak about. In one article, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta says that the disciple is a separated constituent of the guru.
Mm-hmm.
So, just as Mahaprabhu says that these senses have become like my disciples, so in a similar way, the disciples for the guru become like a part of him.
Mm-hmm.
And they become like his senses, where they can experience something, they can collect things, which is with the activity of the senses. Very interesting thing. Okay, anybody else? And Ujjvala Resiga is saying, thank you for this ghee. Hare Krishna. Anybody else with any reflections, anything? Otherwise, we'll go ahead and stop, and we'll be back again next Tuesday. Every Tuesday morning we're here. And I want to thank Brajabani also for sharing us Yashoda Dulal Prabhu from that distant, remote primitive place known as New Jersey, comments, great reflections from Krishna Kund Devi. They indeed were very great reflections. Okay, thank you all so much. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Samaveda Bhakta Binda ki jai, Vanchakalpatarubhishcha, Kripa Sindhu Bhyeva Cha Patitanam,